it's very clear that for Taiwan, they're going to try to cultivate political forces within the government there to push for independence. But again, if you look at Taiwan's economic situation and their ties with the mainland, they're practically being integrated day by day, year by year with the mainland. It's already more or less a de facto integration. So you're going to have this irrational ideological political force in Taipei screaming about independence when the economy's already been integrated with the mainland. And Angelo Giuliano, who I know you know,
our friend,
and he's always talking about if you actually go to Taiwan or on the mainland and you see the best of Taiwan is on the mainland because they know that's where the future is. And they're doing business back and forth because they know that's the future. What is Taiwan going to do if they provoke mainland China and they side with the US? What is that going to get them? Look at Australia. What is it getting them? Nothing. It's getting them nuts. They're opening their veins to spite China and satisfy Washington, but your veins are opened.
And you're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Exactly.
Well, what's the leverage with Japan? Because I mean, you were stationed there. You would know more about Japan than most people. What's the leverage with Japan? I know with Taiwan, it's been semiconductors and this whole game of semiconductors, which I think China will counter by improving their own capacity to produce. So what's the leverage on Japan here?
I mean, the US has tens of thousands of troops in Japan. And that even though the government, certain people in the government, I wouldn't say the government generalized, but certain factions in the government want the US out. A lot of Japanese people want the US out. The ones that don't, they just think that they need the US there to protect them. And we've seen in recent years the US trying to encourage Japan to change their constitution, to remilitarize. But again, at the end of the day, Japan is going to be sitting there looking at China nearby and all of the economic opportunities, and the US, it wouldn't make any sense to pick the US, even though the troops are there, the government is beholden to Washington, but making decisions in favor of the US and provoking China makes no sense. And there's no benefit, there's no long-term benefit.
So, I mean, you mentioned troops based in Japan. So moving slightly sideways in terms of, let's say, military capability, and China has always said that it won't strike first, but it seems to me, from what I understand, that China's second strike capability is pretty much unstoppable, and therefore any first strike on China would guarantee your destruction. It's MAD, it's mutually assured destruction. So, and again, Brian, in your opinion, do you think that this is pretty much, it's not going to happen? What do you think?
We're in uncharted waters because during the Cold War, the US from the beginning and all throughout the Cold War always had a lot of advantages over the Soviet Union. I'm pretty sure the US throughout the entire time had a larger population. They had a strong industrial base at the time. They had the Soviet Union hemmed in on all sides. They had the largest military in the world. They had more nuclear weapons. Things are different with China. China has, 3 or 4 times the population of the US. They have plenty of resources. They're graduating millions more every single year in fields like science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Look at their infrastructure. They have the largest high-speed rail network in the world. The US doesn't have a single kilometer of high-speed rail, not even a single kilometer. And these are metrics representing disparity that grows every single year. And so the US we have never seen the US in a situation where they are facing a larger population, a larger economy. China already has a larger navy. We've never seen this before, so we don't know what the US is going to do. I fear that the discussion that they're having around planning room tables is, if we do an all-out war now, maybe we win, maybe we don't, I don't know. But if we wait 10 years, we're definitely not going to win. That's what I'm worried. I'm worried that they're doing this calculus.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that, and what I think is the most realistic scenario is it'll go the way of the Soviet Union. The interests in the US that have picked this system and stuck with it, it's going to collapse, and something else is going to take its place, like we saw in Russia with the Russian Federation reemerging. And hopefully, and Barry, you were talking about US businesses liking doing business with China. I think it's going to be companies like that and backing political circles that take over, and maybe the US can find a more constructive role to play within the world rather than imposing themselves on the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was taught that my British Empire was wonderful, until I realized it was nothing to do with me at all.
Yeah.
And of course, we've seen, you know, with the rise of America, that the British Empire has kind of petered out. I know they're all still connected, and the banks and the Bank of England, etc., the Fed, they're all still interconnected, the old families of Europe. But the British Empire, in effect, did peter out and eventually say, okay, well, okay, we're not the boss anymore. And again, I'm with you. My hope is that the money will talk and the bullshit will walk, and that eventually the MIC, the American Empire, these psychopaths will say, well, okay, what the hell, you know, we lost, and too bad.
I don't think it'll be like that. I think it will get ugly in the US. I think there will be this very kind of ugly transition, just like when the Soviet Union collapsed. It didn't immediately turn into the Russia we know today. There was this very painful transition period, because they're not going to give up power willingly. It's going to be ugly.
And as you said, the American psyche, you're taught that America is great, and so for the American people, that would be a big thing to let go of. That you're not, that America is not the be all and end all, and so that it's deep in the American psyche, like it was in the British psyche. That's so yeah, it won't be easy. Will there be a civil war in America? There's a question just popped into my head.
Yeah, I don't, you know, like civil wars, like when people talk about civil wars or war in general, people have to understand that to wage a war, you need financing, you need logistics, you need weapons, you need to actually have a drawn out real conflict. That usually takes state sponsors, and even the US Civil War, I mean, the South was fighting as a whole. And they had their own economy, plus they had foreign backers, and so did the North. So I don't think it will come to that. There will be violence, I think, but I think it will be like the Soviet Union, where there were some places that were crazy, and other places that really, I wouldn't say were unaffected, but you know, life more or less went on as normal. Things were not as good. But if you were just patient, you kept your head low, you know, wait for better times. I think that's the most likely. So I hope that's what happens.
What about, I'm thinking now, because obviously I discovered you and your great writing on New Eastern Outlook with Andrei Volchek, kind of led me to you as well, and I hold you both in great esteem. Is China making any blundering mistakes in this whole huge, kind of scary at the moment political chess game, geopolitical chess game? Do you think China's getting it all right? Do you think there's anything that China isn't doing that it should be doing?
I think what you see China doing, they're doing all of the things that they should be doing. There's a lot of room for improvement, and you see the Chinese government, and you see all these people and organizations and platforms learning as they go along. That this is very important, but they're very patient. You know, the Chinese government and China as a nation is very patient. They're suffering a lot of humiliation at the hands of the US. And this is also the same case with the Russian Federation right now. They suffer a lot of humiliation at the hands of the West. They're very patient. People might remember Turkey shooting down that Russian jet over Syria, and Russians died, and people wanted blood. And I told people at the time, I said, the Russian government understands that the best revenge is going to be winning that conflict in the long term, not getting short-term satisfying revenge. That is how they're going to get the revenge. And we see that, and luckily they're not petty in Moscow or Beijing. They're not petty people. And they're being the adults in the room, basically, to the West, which is just setting fires everywhere.
You can try to fight with principles and you can try to stick to Geneva Conventions. But ultimately, if you lose the war because the other side fights more dirty than you, then you don't get to write the history books. You don't get to carry forward a better way of being for the human race. And my advice to the government was, you know, guys, it's time to start fighting dirty. You know, you're not going to win fighting clean against these people.
It's very tempting, you know, especially when you see what the West is doing on a daily basis, and you understand what they're doing. Like for example, in Myanmar, they are trying to burn that country to the ground. It's millions of people's lives that are being impacted right now, and who face greater tragedy as this conflict continues. And the U.S. is driving this entire thing. So on one hand, you would say China should do something about that, even if it's not fighting dirty, but they should do more about that to try to stop what's going on in Myanmar. And I don't sit around the table when they're talking about these things, so I don't know what their strategy is towards it. When I look at Thailand, you know, Thailand's weakness is the government doesn't control their own media, and they need a lot of serious help from countries like Russia and China who do control their media and use it for their own country's best interests. Here you have state-funded media where all of the journalists go to the West to study, and when they come back, they're promoting Western interests instead of Thailand's. It makes no sense. We already have the BBC. We don't need a Thai-funded version of the BBC. We just don't need that.
It's very interesting. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, so on one hand, we would say that. On the other hand, when you look at the metrics, when you look at how big China is, and you look at how they're developing their own country and how they're interacting with their partners, building their partners up. And this was a conversation I had with Angelo about the last thing an empire would do is build infrastructure and empower its colonies. But China, with its partners, is doing exactly that. They're building infrastructure. They're empowering these countries. This is the exact opposite of empire. This is creating a balance of power. And so I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that they're creating a system that is going to smother what the West is at the moment. And those toxic interests that are doing all these horrible things. They could fight fire with fire if necessary, but I think they have a much smarter, more patient strategy. It's just drives people like us crazy because we don't know,
Exactly.
and we have to sit here and watch as it plays out.
Exactly this. You know, you've reminded me of something. This, when you're a kid and you have building blocks, you know, and as a kid, you like to build them up, and then it's very satisfying to knock them down. The most difficult thing is to keep building them until you've achieved something. And this is the difference. America is this squawking infant sitting on top of the world, knocking the bricks down all the time. And China is the smart kid who just keeps building.
Yes. Oh, well, I was just going to say a good example of that. We don't know all of the details yet, but there was a bus in northern Pakistan that got bombed or exploded. And there were Chinese engineers on that bus, and they were working on a dam in Pakistan. And we should wait for all the details to come out. But if you read any article out of the West, they're more than happy to tell you how there have been all of these attacks on Chinese engineers and projects in Pakistan to disrupt the corridor of the BRI going through Pakistan. And one of those groups, the Baluchistan separatists, are openly and have been for many years backed by the US government. It's not even a secret. There's entire articles about free Baluchistan, and there was legislation introduced in the US Congress to support an independent Baluchistan, basically chop a piece off of Pakistan. And in these articles, they specifically say it's to thwart China. It's to thwart the inroads that they're making in Pakistan and the joint cooperation in development. So just like you said, they're like infants, just knocking everything down, and bullying everyone in the nursery school, taking their toys, knocking down what other people are building, and this is how they're running things.
Now, you brought another thing to my mind, which is the bully in the playground. And my experience of school was the bully in the playground keeps bullying until somebody smacks him in the nose, and then he doesn't bully anymore. And I want China to smack the bully in the nose, basically.
I think a lot of people feel that way when you watch what the U.S. does, and people who really understand it on an on-the-ground sense that these are real people's lives that the U.S. has destroyed, like what they did in Iraq, for example, or Syria.
1 million people dead, yeah.
Exactly. Or even here in 2010, these US-backed groups were killing people in the streets, and you could walk out. These are streets that you
this
and
is in Thailand.
your friends and family. Yes, they burned down sections of the city. They had armed militants, and if you read a BBC article about that, they will say something like mostly unarmed. The government cracked down on mostly unarmed protesters, and they won't tell you that the militants had Kalashnikovs, M16s, hand grenades, grenade launchers, and it was an armed conflict in the streets of Bangkok in 2010. They won't talk about that. It's very deliberate. And it's just like what they do everywhere. They cover up the provocation, and then they only focus on the government's reaction to demonize them, which is exactly what they're doing in Xinjiang, which was the whole impetus of the BBC smear article, because people were speaking up about that.
Brian, is there anything you'd like to add or bring in, or?
I don't know if you want to talk about the BBC hit piece a little bit, or
yeah, we can do, because I've seen a few things that I've sent you a couple of links that other people have picked up. I know you did what I wanted to do, but you did it before me, which is I looked at my highlighted documents, like, Jesus, Brian's got everything there. I wonder if somebody at the BBC isn't going, you know what, should we stop doing this? Because every time we do it, we shoot ourselves in the foot.
What alternative do they have? Because they're committed to lying about everything going on in and around China. There's a John Sudworth everywhere. You know, there's a John Sudworth in China, but we have our own John Sudworth here in Thailand. His name is Jonathan Head. He does the exact same things. This isn't an anomaly. This is what they train them to do and send them out to go do. They're just dishonest troublemakers. They're agitators, using the smokescreen of journalism to divide and destroy. And one of the other points I wanted to make was, say yourself or Daniel Dumbrell, you guys are very political, and you make you focus on a lot of political issues. The other people were like travel vloggers, you know, travel vloggers. We here in Thailand, there's a lot of Thai travel vloggers that travel around in Thailand. If you understand Thai, they're really high quality production. They're exciting. They show you all these little places in Thailand that you would never know about. Of course, they make deals with the people that they're promoting, or they're working with somebody else. And there's also a lot of behind the scenes sort of things. So like they're showing you them pulling into the hotel parking lot or something. Like, who took that video of them pulling in? Obviously they got there and then they took the video of them pulling in, because they're trying to tell a story. You know, they're storytellers, and that's what they're doing. And the BBC tries to take this and spin it as if it's something sinister. And they made, you know, the accusation that they're spreading disinformation. What disinformation? They never tell us. They never told us.
I spoke a few times recently about this, that the China's accused of having the firewall, which is there, as Nathan Richards mentioned. He's explained why it's there. It's there to protect people from groups that were using these channels in nefarious ways to attack. But there is obviously also a Western firewall, which is there to indoctrinate, and also to prevent any positive message coming from the East, from Thailand, from Cambodia, from China. And part of this war, the battle that's going on, and there is a definite East-West divide, and China will never be able to compete on the Western media channels because it's done unfairly. Twitter are in conjunction or in cahoots with ASPI and destroying China. They did it to me, you know, 12 years of work down the drain. So I'm wondering how China can actually get over or under or around this Western firewall. What's your take on that, Brian? Because he who controls the information pretty much controls the flow of things.
Absolutely. Well, there's two ways of looking at this. Regarding a firewall, think about a nation's information space as part of its sovereign territory. So every nation has a right to defend that. Having a foreign corporation controlling channels of communication inside your country would be like having foreign traffic cops minding your highways. It makes no sense. So every country should have something like that. As far as China countering it, again, I think this is going to be a very patient strategy of death by 1,000 cuts, where they just keep working on the propaganda. And then there's ordinary people out there. I don't coordinate with any state media. I'm just out there because I don't like seeing the lies. And there's a lot of people out there doing this now, and they can't silence everybody. And I think eventually what's going to happen is that the truth is going to come out. And I think in a lot of ways it already is. The audience that the BBC and other Western media organizations are focusing on now is this very tiny, highly distilled group of ignorant people. And I don't want to say that in a disparaging way, but they are. And quite honestly, racist. A lot of them are racist. They don't like Chinese people just because they're Chinese. And now this whole conflict is just giving them an excuse, legitimizing their racism, and they can come out with it. And I think we see the tragic results of that playing out in the streets of the US now. All this hate, all of these hate crimes. It's very obvious that they're doing this on purpose.
My take is that China should, and is to a certain extent. I mean, you can get, it should offer alternatives, and China has the power to do this. China has the information infrastructure to do this. You can get an international version of WeChat, Weixin. You can get an international version of Weibo. Bilibili is potentially a hugely powerful channel. It's the Chinese version of YouTube, but at the moment it is all in Chinese. I think if they could make this available, make it useful, make it open, make it more free, then it's a massive weapon for China to, well, not a weapon for China, it's a massive way to help people understand each other more.
Actually, I 100% agree with you. And I always kind of make this argument that China and Russia export weapons, right? They export weapons to help countries defend their physical territory. Why don't they start exporting alternatives to Twitter, Facebook, and Google to help protect information space? And this is something that a country like Thailand desperately needs. They desperately need this. The information game here is completely dominated by US-based tech giants and these opposition groups funded by Washington. It's horrible. It's depressing to watch, and the government is so ill-equipped to deal with that. I don't know if they're like they're being very patient and just pretending they're not doing anything, or they're just not able to do anything. You don't want to leave that up to chance.
So there's a definite positive. It's like right, export these channels, make them available, make them, promote them. Actually put some time and some money into promoting these and saying, look, you can use here. I mean, I'm telling people on Twitter, and get your exit strategy ready, because they're going to chop you, sooner or later they're going to chop you. So it's time to get an exit strategy ready. For me, this is a golden moment for China in the information sphere. It's a golden moment of opportunity where they could really, I'm not saying take over, but they could change the game.
Yes, there needs to be an alternative. I was kicked off of Twitter and Facebook at the same time. They were working together. You want to talk about coordinated activities. It was on the same day at the same time. And that's what can happen to you. So if you've built up everything on one of these US-based media, you could disappear overnight. And it's just, there's nothing you can do about it. Where are you going to even complain about it? They took your voice away. Who are you going to complain to? And they're purging accounts by the thousands now. In Thailand, they were purging thousands of accounts just because they were anti the US backed opposition. So they just purged them off of Twitter. And you'll see the BBC do entire articles where they're citing, oh, we saw all of this reaction on Twitter. It's like, well, Twitter is completely dominated by the opposition. Of course, that's what you saw. They know that. It's just another, another aspect of this tapestry of lies they're telling.
It's difficult for people to let go. Even me, when I lost 12 years of work on Twitter, it's a big blow, as it's happened to you. It is a big blow. Jesus Christ, I lost all this. But once you've lost everything, you're kind of free, because it doesn't matter. You've got nothing else to lose. So this thing, my advice to people is let go. Be prepared to let go and find new ways of doing things. Be prepared to let go. Save your data, get it downloaded, get your archives, and be prepared to let go of this. And to what in effect, let go of what in effect is an echo chamber that they keep you in. You think you're talking to people, you think you're reaching people, but it's an echo chamber. So let go, people,
People need to start thinking about this, because they're censoring because they're losing the information more.
Exactly, they're losing. So Exodus, movement of the people. It's time. Brian, thank you so much for this. It's been hugely enlightening to me, and I'm sure to everybody else. We've covered so much ground, and you are always bang on. So deeply appreciated, my friend, deeply appreciated.
And thank you for having me, Barry. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll catch up with you soon. Thank you, Brian. Have a great evening.
Okay. You too.
Bye-bye.